Hello, I'd like to share a potted history of inclusive Wicca. So it's been about 10 years, well, 12 years now since the publication of my book, All Acts of Love and Pleasure, Inclusive Wicca. And obviously, a lot of developments led up to the publication of that book. So I'd like to just go through a few of the key developments that led to inclusive Wicca. So obviously, Wicca was founded in, or became public in the 1940s, and it's no secret that Gerald Gardner was homophobic. Um, and of course, homosexuality was illegal until 1967 in Britain. So, um, it was really in the 1960s that Wicca became incredibly popular in the counterculture, along with things like tarot and Lord of the Rings and left-wing politics. Now, Alex Sanders conducted at least one, as probably more, same-sex initiations, as well as cross-gender initiations. So, and there are a number of prominent gay Alexandrians. In the 60s, unfortunately, most, but not all, Gardnerian covens were homophobic. Um, Now, it's interesting that it turns out Gardner actually knew a transgender person. Whether he continued to hang out with her after she transitioned is unclear. Um, but none of these things are cut and dried because we don't know to what extent Gardner's homophobia was influenced by um, the prevailing culture of homophobia and the fact that um, homosexuality was illegal at the time. Anyway, um, in the context of all this, it's very, very significant that Alexander's, the leader of Alexandrian Wicca, um, actually performed same-sex initiations. Again, I'm not quite sure of the date when he did that, but he started being active in the 60s, so I've put him in the 60s. Okay. In the 70s, because of the general homophobia of um, mainstream Wicca, and also because there's a strong radical lesbian separatist feminist movement going on, um, we have the formation of Dianic Wicca by Z Budapest and others. And obviously, this is a really important development. Sometimes, in order to achieve equality, you have to go away from the mainstream, form an enclave, and do your thing in order to develop it and bring it back to the mainstream. So this was an important development. Still not inclusive Wicca as we know it today, but it's an interesting and important development. Also, at the same around this time, we have the Minoan Brotherhood, which was started by Eddie Buczynski, who also founded the Welsh witchcraft tradition in New York. Um, and so that's him on the left. And then the four guys in the black and white photo are the founders of the Radical Fairies, which wasn't exactly Wicca, but there was a lot of crossover between the Radical Fairies and Wicca. And it's certainly a pagan group. So in the 80s, we start to see LGBT people joining Gardnerian Wicca. Um, there's still homophobia in covens, and there's still people who believe that, gay people can't make magic or whatever. Um, but there is an influx from the 1980s onwards of LGBT people into Gardnerian Wicca. For instance, I was initiated in 1991 and I'm bisexual, so there you go. In the 1990s, we have several books on gay and lesbian witchcraft published. One example is Amber Kay, who is handfasted with Erin Azrael Kay. This book is, I don't know if you can see the picture very well because it's a bit, the contrast isn't that great. Um, So it's called Moonrise, Welcome to Dianic Wicca by Amber K. Witche. Um, and then at the bottom it says Reformed Congregation of the Goddess. Now, Amber Kay went on to write with her wife um, a book called Covencraft, which was pretty important at the time. And then, very famously, Gay Witchcraft Empowering the Tribe with by Christopher Penchak, which talks about gay Wicca. Um, Also around this time, Hoblink, which was a network for queer pagans, was formed in the UK, and it had its own magazine. I contributed an article to it in 1999, and they did same-sex hand fastings and had a number of activities and meetups and whatnot. Um, and also, really important development in the UK was Queer Pagan Camp. And if you go to my YouTube, you can see a number of different interviews I've conducted with people who were involved with Queer Pagan Camp, most notably um, Lou, and why can't I think of her surname right now? Anyway, Queer Pagan Camp, really important for developing these ideas. Also, Woody Fox was another person who was involved in that, and I've done an interview with him as well. So, and also in the 1990s, you've got things like the Greenham Common Women's Camp and other radical, and the more really important, the Dragon Environmental Network, a lot of which included LGBT people, LGBT pagans and witches. So, a lot going on in the 1990s, very important decade, in my opinion. Okay. Another really important development in the 1990s, not specifically sort of LGBT development, but I'm including it because it the way that progressive Wicca was formulated was the idea that it wasn't a separate branch of witchcraft or a separate branch of Wicca from Gardnerian or Alexandrian. It was a tendency within Gardnerian and Alexandrian. And the key thing about progressive Wicca was that um, instead of having the high priest and the high priestess at the front doing all the rituals, and everybody else was sort of like the audience or the congregation, uh, it sought to involve everybody in the rituals. Everybody in the coven had a role and they could all do something. Another thing that was very distinctive about progressive Wicca was that they tended to have um, men's circles and women's circles. And um, I think it was important at the time. Anyway, it was really important. And mostly the thing that I really liked was the idea that everybody got up and did things. Um, the coven I was in wasn't formally part of progressive Wicca, but it certainly took that approach of everybody having a role in the rituals. Um, and so and these three, Karen Rainbird, Tam Campbell, and David Rankin, were the founders of Progressive Wicca. Okay. So 1992, I actually only became aware of this piece of liturgy in 2006, but it turns out that Crow and Margaret had written it in 1992 or thereabouts. Um, so it's a way of doing cakes and wine without making either the cup or the theme explicitly um, male or female. So uh, this is a contemporary picture of Crow, and this is Margaret, who sadly passed away in 1999. She was very lovely. And again, I've done an interview with Crow in my Queer Magic series, so you can find out more there. Okay, 1997, I was present at Doreen Valiente's talk at the Pagan Federation conference. She got a standing ovation for the whole talk and for being awesome. Um, and one of the things that she said in a very wide-ranging talk was that she endorsed gay witches. Uh, this was the nub of what she said. I don't agree with this prejudice against gay people, either inside the craft of the wise or outside it. And you can read the full speech on the Inclusive Wicca website. So, in the early 2000s, I know of at least one Gardnerian coven leader and two Alexandrian coven leaders, um, who are high priests of the same coven, who performed same-sex initiations. There may have been many more, but I don't know about them. If anybody wants to comment about any that they know about without naming names, that would be interesting. Um, and also, I had my own coven from 2003 onwards, and I started experimenting with inclusive practices, and with the enthusiastic support and participation of my coven, I might add. Okay. So that led eventually to the publication of the first edition of All Acts of War, the writing, first of all, in 2013, and the publication in 2014 of All Acts of Love and Pleasure, Inclusive Wicca. So I actually started writing this book because somebody gave a talk in about 2011 at the Pagan Federation conference, critiquing all the heterocentric things in Wicca, and detailed the heterocentric things in Wicca in great detail, one by one, um, and then said, "Okay, everybody, you know what to do." And everybody's in the room going, not sure that we do know what to do. So I thought, okay, challenge accepted. I'll write a book on how we make Wicca inclusive. And I should emphasize at this point that inclusive Wicca has always been about including neurodivergent people, LGBT people, disabled people, people of color, and anybody else who might be marginalized. Like, okay, left-handed people aren't significantly oppressed, but somebody once told me that you can't hold your uthemi with your left hand, for crying out loud. So, anybody who might be marginalized from the most, from being left-handed to being elderly or disabled or any possible source of exclusion, we seek to include everybody. And most importantly, the difference between inclusive Wicca and earlier books on gay Wicca and lesbian Wicca is that I'm bisexual, so I wanted to celebrate same-sex love and different sex love, right? Like, it's all very well going, okay, we're going to have a ritual which is all about, um, lesbian relationships or gay relationships. But, bisexuals can get it on with members of the other sex as well. So, and indeed any gender, a range of genders. Um, so I wanted a form of Wicca where we could do the let's homocentric stuff and heterocentric stuff in the same ritual, or like even better, come up with a way of practicing that celebrated both, you know, all acts of love and pleasure, rather than only some acts of love and pleasure. Um, so, and I think that gets lost sometimes, that that was the intention. I told somebody that the other day and they were surprised. So, yeah, I think it's important. Okay, so from 2014 to the present, we formed a discussion group on Facebook called the Inclusive Wicca Discussion Group, where people put forward more ideas about how to practice in an inclusive way and how to think about Wicca in an inclusive way, and also met up at events and so on and so forth, which is how we came up with the two chalices ritual. I think I have a video about that as well. And various people contributed ideas, and we put together um, a document called Inclusive Covens, or what they're like. what is an inclusive coven, actually, it was called. And I developed that into the Inclusive Wicca Manifesto, which was published in Queer Magic Power Beyond Boundaries. Um, and in, I've now included the Inclusive Wicca Manifesto in the latest edition of All Acts, which we will come to in a minute. Okay, so 2016, um, the publication of Pagan Consent Culture. Now, there has been several high profile cases of abuse in the pagan community, and we wanted to create a pagan specific consent culture. And I think that consent culture is an important part of inclusive Wicca. Um, this anthology is a collection of writings by um, different pagans from different traditions and including Wicca, and it talks about how to create a safe space in ritual for all the participants. Um, and I think it's really important. Okay, so in 2020, so in 2018, I actually self-published these two books, and then I extensively revised and updated them for the second edition, which was published by the Doreen Valiente Foundation in conjunction with the Centre for Pagan Studies. So these were inspired or incited, perhaps, by a ritual I went to where people just seemed to be shouting at the quarters, and I didn't like it. So I thought, we need to actually look at what we're doing on the inside, what's happening on the inside when we're doing a ritual. Um, and then I also thought, well, so that is known as the inner work of ritual, a phrase I got from Geoffrey Samuel, a religious studies scholar. Um, so that developed into a whole raft of things for developing your inner awareness. Um, and And when I stitched it all together, I realised I'd actually written enough for two books, which is how it became two books that came out at the same time. Anyway, the other thing about all of this is that these books further develop the whole idea of inclusive Wicca. So if you are interested in inclusive Wicca, I definitely suggest reading these two as well. Okay, so what about further on into the 2020s? I feel that inclusive Wicca has now gone mainstream. We're less of a niche thing. I think being exclusive is now like the marginalized group, at least I hope so. Um, However, and this is a big however, we're still in a sort of don't ask, don't tell situation around same-sex initiation. Um, and more covens are practicing it in an inclusive way, but it doesn't necessarily mean they accept or practice same-sex initiation because there are other inclusive practices, and you can find out more about those in my video on inclusive Wicca. So we're partway there. There's still work to do. In 2025, the second edition of All Acts of Love and Pleasure was published. It includes the Inclusive Wicca Manifesto, as I mentioned, and it's got a whole new chapter on anti-racist efforts. And I've revised all the terminology so that, where I used slightly outdated terms before or where the new terms have been developed, I fixed that. So we now have a whole thing referring to priestesses instead of um, priests slash priestesses or whatever. Um, and I also kind of smoothed out the prose and made it a bit more readable as well. Uh, so yeah, I'm rather proud of the new edition. So I hope you will consider buying a copy. Also, as you can see, it has this beautiful purple cover designed by Sarita Deste with the original art that was on the first edition that was painted by Paul Rucker. So check out his work as well. Okay, future directions. What's next for inclusive Wicca? I really hope that same-sex and same-gender initiations will be uncontroversial in the future. Like, we're not trying to replace cross-gender initiation or, you know, like this same-sex and same-gender initiations are just for people who actually want one. As a lot of people have said, if you don't like same-sex initiation or same-gender initiation, don't have one. Simple as that. Um, but, at least be accepting that other people do find meaning and fulfillment in having a same-sex initiation or a same-gender initiation. Um, and, it's really important that for me, I think it's really important to accept same-sex and same-gender initiation, um, because it validates same-sex and same-gender relationships and partnerships. Um, I also think in order to kind of get over the don't ask, don't tell problem, uh, if all Wiccan events had an explicit policy to say, we welcome people to this event who have had a same-sex initiation. Um, because otherwise we will end up persisting in the don't ask, don't tell culture, which I think would be a shame. Okay, so further reading. I've got a whole queer pagan reading list on my website. It's on Dowsing for Divinity, my blog actually. Uh, but these three should keep you busy. Obviously, make sure to have the most up-to-date edition. Um, and please let me know what you think in the comments, and don't forget to like and subscribe when you've finished. Thank you. Blessed be. Bye. Okay, I can't find stop recording, which is really annoying. Because I haven't done this for ages. I think I found it now. There.